Welcome back, everybody. So today we're getting into part 2 of A Man and His Symbols. So if you liked the first episode, here is the second episode. Let's go, guys. We're talking all things shadow work. We're getting into Anima versus Animus, which is parts of the personality. We're going to be getting into how like synchronicities and unconscious and how the conscious works and the social aspects of yourself in general. So when you're learning about psychology and philosophy, this is the stuff. I had a lot of people that I have coached through this and have read this, and they're like, wow, what we learn in here is what is really behind, psychology. It's just learning stuff which is, it speaks so deep and rings so true, and it's just so impressive, right? So if you get anything out of this and you like this, please share it with someone. Please subscribe and give us a follow if you like this type of really deep work, and just understanding in this as well that part of you when you learn this stuff is going to want to share it and tell other people. You're like, yeah, I can't wait to share this and tell other people. Like, that's part of personal growth, right? But the thing which is really important to notice is that not everyone wants to grow, nor do they want to become awake, because of the things that you learn in here are confronting, and it's quite uncomfortable, especially when you're having the realizations about yourself and you're like, wow, everything that I do is not conscious. It's quite scary, and people, when they face the truth of themselves, is scary because they don't, it's very uncomfortable. So once you go learn this, I encourage you not to go share and tell everyone, hey, you got to learn this thing, you got to face this stuff about yourself and look at your shadow and look at these aspects about you that are wrong, because immediately people are going to feel shame and guilt and be like, what are you talking about? And then you look like a bit of a weirdo sometimes if you're like, oh, I learned all this crazy stuff. So if you're really comfortable and your friends love you, go nuts. But if not, just be mindful. Just be mindful about sharing some of this stuff for your sake, because you might get to the point, and I've seen this happen many a times, where people come in and like, oh, I want to share this thing and share this and tell stuff, and then they get rejected from someone and they think, wow, is it something that's me that's weird? I just want to let you know, no, you're not weird for learning all this stuff. You are becoming the real sense of the word woke. You're actually becoming that from listening to this and learning the stuff from here. So as always, this is going to increase the size of your brain. So if you don't want to listen to this again, please don't. But if you do want to increase the size of your brain, this is your opportunity to dive in deep. Let's go. So if you haven't also watched or listened to the last podcast of A Man and His Symbols Part 1, please go back and watch that. It'll be linked around here somewhere. Click on that one. Please, please, please watch that, because otherwise this isn't going to make much sense. But you can, I guess, if you really want to. Here we go. So let's get into it, guys. So just touching on last time, roughly what we talked about was the difference between heroology and symbolism, and how it shows up in dreams, and that there's different kinds of people, spiritual and sciencey people, and there's people that have a bit of both. We got into understanding what consciousness is, what the shadow is, and initiations. That's what we talked about a lot in the last episode. We touched on a little bit on the anima and how it shows up in a positive way. If you have a positive relationship with your mother, that's how it shows up. Then we got a little bit onto the shadow. So I'm going to touch again onto the shadow a little bit and then lead on from there. So just understand that your shadow is the opposite of ego. It is the embodiments. It embodies qualities on the dislikes of others. So, I dislike that thing about someone, and then you accidentally input that and start acting out like that. Let's say, for example, you dislike the way that your mum used to talk to you because she was snappy and quite reactive, and the next minute you become snappy and quite reactive. Dun dun dun. Shadow is that unconscious part of yourself that is taking over, is manipulating, that wants control out of protection. It's trying to protect you, right? Out of fear most of the time. Overwhelming shadow has irresistible impulses that should not always be heroically repressed. So there's powerful, irresistible impulses that should not always be heroically repressed, because when we're repressing those things, we're not expressing them. The goal is expression, not repression, because anytime that we repress something, it actually needs to be expressed in some way. The shadow power comes from the urge of self-pointing in the same direction than one does not know itself, or the shadow is behind the inner pressure. So in terms of the self-pointing, it's like the urge of wanting to either express yourself, tell something, blame someone, say something else, and just pointing in general in the same direction, then one does not know if it is the self or if it is the shadow. It's like, who is it? Like, who is that one that's needing to, that creates that inner pressure to point, blame, negate, deflect, right? So the shadow is responsible from that. That's its power comes from that urge. Interesting. Well, interesting, right? When thinking about that in terms of the power, because it's like, holy dooly, right? This is how am I not in control here? And the greater the pressure, or the greater the urge, the greater the pressure, the more likely we're going to take action on something that we may not be in control of. Interesting. Like recently I've been having this like thing for coming up for travel. I've got this really cool opportunity, and I know that the shadow is at work because financially it's super stressing, super stretching for me, but it's a great opportunity. But in the meantime, there may be things where I may have to let some people down and reorganize things in my business, which I don't want to let go of. Whilst at the same time, if I don't go on the trip, I'm going to let down someone who, is really excited for me to come. So there's this two parts to the shadow here, which make me feel I'm torn between two types of let down. And it's like, who do I want to let down, more? And that for me of coming up for that is just the shadow. I'm actually not letting down anyone. And like physically, like mentally, I know that, but inside my body, I don't. And it creates this inner pressure of like avoidance, like avoid this thing, avoid that, drag it out, don't mention anything, sabotage yourself, blah, blah, blah. And it's all coming up in different ways and shapes and forms around like, it could be like not booking tickets to something, or delaying the inevitable, or talking to people, or not talking to people, and not telling people, leaving things to the last minute, all instead of avoiding and making the decision because it's quite confronting. And you can feel that inner pressure build up, and then out of a reaction to that, that's when it hit the avoidance, which is actually a shame thing. It's avoidance from shame. But just knowing that on the top of your head is like, okay, well, rationally and logically, I know this. That's my shadow at play, but it's also not embodied. Like, so the question for me sitting in this and understanding my shadow is like, okay, well, how do I embody this now and in the future so that I can make this decision so that it doesn't cause the inner pressure and the urges? The process of it is, I don't want to let other people down. Where have I let other people down? Which I'm attaching that projection here, like in this scenario. So like, where does that even come from? And why is it there? And why is it there? And because I can't locate it currently at the moment, sitting in this is like quite uncomfortable. So just letting you guys know, like that's an example of the pressure from the shadow, right? A lot of self-analysis. And sometimes it's real powerful knowing this stuff. You're like, oh, cool, I know it, but I can't do anything about it because it's like, it's in my body and it's not embodied yet as of the moment. But we're always going to come up with things like that in terms of our shadow. That's actually, sometimes a bit of an extreme example. And then symbolize deep unconscious impulses that can be felt in one's body as it were, and that points to a way out. Interesting, right? So there's deep unconscious impulses, which could be, let's say, for me in that situation, could be like avoidant, as it were, which points to a way out. Interesting, right? So it's like, oh, this is a way out. If I avoid this and it all goes to shit, then I've got an out and I've got an example and I can blame it on disorganization, right? Dun, dun, dun. And it takes a lot of courage to take the unconscious seriously and tackle the problems that it raises. So what's coming up in regards for me in using this situation, because it's prevalent at the moment, is it's like, okay, take this seriously, take your growth seriously, and there's a problem here you haven't tackled. And you can either lean in and go tackle the problem, or like lean out and tackle the problem as well. But the problem is, I think with two ways in there in terms of dealing with shame, is one way is if you lean out, it's like then, let's say, for example, I don't go, then I have to make sure that I intend to tackle that problem myself, or with some mentorship and talk about it. If I do not talk, if I go lean in, and let's say I go, for example, then during that process, the problem's going to get tackled. So depending on where you are, it's interesting. But as it mentions here, most people are too lazy to consider how the unconscious affects them. Bum, bum, bum. I love that. Too lazy to consider how the unconscious affects them. So understanding how it affects me right now is it's like, woof, we've got some decisions to make here, which is really cool. Awesome. So next point here, I love this point here. A vital person vitalizes. Just let that one land. This is Joseph Campbell quote. A vital person vitalizes. I love that quote, and I'll leave that up to you to interpret yourself. So what we talk about here is we get back into the anima. Just to give you guys a quick debrief on what the anima is. The anima is the masculine is the feminine within inside the masculine. The animus is the masculine within inside the feminine. And a part of our journeys as an individual is to integrate our own, like as a man, it's my journey to integrate the feminine within inside me. And within a woman, it's her journey to integrate the masculine within inside her. Depending, because some people you get men that are born with feminine souls, and it is their role to then integrate an animus, and you get women born with masculine souls, which is their role to integrate the anima. And then sometimes, depending on people's traumas and stuff, which is very interesting, like say I'm a man and I've got an anima, is I can sometimes lean so much on the shadow that my anima grows an animus, which is very interesting. And then you got to go back and heal the animus, heal the anima, heal the anima, heal the animus. Sorry, which is crazy, right? It's just like there's a lot that comes into it. And Robert Bly did have a warning around the anima. If a guy searches for his anima inside a woman, that woman should run away screaming. Right, there's too much pressure, that's too overwhelming, that's sort of like putting the role of a mother on someone. Oh, interesting, right? So this is how like people's animas can show up. So let's get into it. The positive anima, so which is take seriously feelings, mood, expectations, and fantasies, which I think is really important to understand those and take those seriously, being aware of one's own feelings, moods, expectations, and fantasies. The anima, so for a man, just to say, so I'm saying in the sentence, right? The feminine within inside him is responsible for that. So when he becomes in touch with his intuition, has an open heart and can lead really well with people and pays attention to his fantasies. Oh, that's very interesting. Has these expectations that he lives up to. Is aware of his moods and understands his feelings and his own intuition, it's like you are integrating that fantastically. And that is the goal, which is simple to say, but not so easy to do. And then uses them in some form of writing, dancing, painting, sculpture, musical comp, or some sort of creation, right? So something creative where it's channeling, it could be video recording, talking, speaking, whatever it is, using the feelings, moods, expectations, and fantasies and channeling them through a medium. And when he works at this patiently and slowly, other deep unconscious material wells up and connects with the earlier material. So just in regards to healing, there's a reason why therapists get people to write and journal things down. Let's say if someone's getting really creative and they write out their whole life in the form of, and they get creative with it, and it's like, a fairy tale story, and they write their life out with it in regards to that. That can connect deep unconscious stuff welling up and connects with earlier material, which can enable someone to heal their traumas. But not only heal their traumas, it can enable someone to get really clear on the decisions and things that they should be taking action on right now in their life, so they're not wasting any time. And it could be creating business ideas, relationship ideas, travel ideas, whatever it is. It's just linking stuff that's preventing. So it's interesting, like looking at this for myself. If I was coaching myself, I would encourage myself with a decision that I've got to make to get creative with it. Like do some writing down, pay attention to my feelings and my moods, see what I can do, write some stuff down, channel it, see what comes up so I can heal this block so that it doesn't happen again. I actually think I know where it comes from now, speaking on that. I'll speak on it real quickly. I think it comes from my dad was very trapped around leaving the country, never wanted to leave. My granddad left all the time. My granddad essentially got rid of all his money. My dad has an okay business that he created for himself, and he is just so fearful of leaving the country. He left one time to come to me for Bali for like 4 days, and that's all, which is like a 6-hour flight from here. And because of his fear for traveling and letting go and not moving around business, I think I've taken that on, which is preventing me from leveling up. So probably I would, if I was coaching him, I'd suggest a conversation with me to tell him that. So that I can get it off my chest. Interesting, because he knows. So after fantasy is fixed in the specific form, it must be examined intellectually, ethically, with an evaluation, feeling, reaction. This is so true and powerful. Most fantasies also come around as sexual fantasies. So the sexual fantasies, the desires, you come up with some sort of fantasy. It's like, okay, what is this fantasy that I've got? Intellectually, ethically, with an evaluation of evaluation of a feeling reaction. How do I feel about this? What's the ethical points of this? Is it unethical? Is it ethical? Like someone might have a fantasy about cheating on someone, for example, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, it is unethical intellectually. Why is this coming up? You can think about it. Okay, how am I feeling about it? To take those seriously. And it's essential to regard your fantasies as absolutely real and no lurking doubt when this individual process gradually becomes the single reality, and it can unfold its true form. So essentially, like, let's say, for example, it was that you had this fantasy about cheating on a partner, right? And you take it real seriously and you get clear on it. One of the shadow aspects that is just coming up is like, okay, I'm not happy with how this relationship is. And if it keeps going, I have to swallow the bit of truth that it's going to have to end. Otherwise, we're going to get really angry at each other or resentful at each other and spiteful. So instead, what that does is brings to attention, okay, I need to have a conversation and I can ask for what I need. I can have a conversation around here like, hey, I'm feeling really unattracted and I'm having these desires around other people. So confronting to hear. And I actually need your help and support to get over this thing. And at the moment, there's something sticky that's in this relationship that we're going to have to figure out. I don't know what it is right now, but I know that with these fantasies that I'm having and these urges that I'm having and these impulses that, I feel, this is what's true and I'd like your support, right? That is not what to actually do. That is just a pure example of just understanding and like, okay, taking these things seriously and owning them and part of your shadow and listening to them. That doesn't have to say in everything, because you may have like a fleeting fantasy, but it is to take your fantasies seriously. Some will stick out more than others. So essentially what they're saying is that anima equals a guide and a mediator to the inner world. So what is going on with the feminine inside me? Now, remember, what is the feminine? It's the feelings, mood, expectations, it's fantasies, it's impulses, it's urges. That is essentially what is meant by the anima. And by looking at the stories, that is how you can integrate it. And by speaking your truth with it and being honest about it and transparent with it in a healing way, not a blaming and shameful way, that is how you can really start to hone in on your anima and start integrating it. Whoa, amazing. So the hero can differentiate. I love this quote. The hero can differentiate feelings and behaviors towards women. Right, this is really cool. So this is speaking to a man in general. This would definitely come to women as well. So it's the differentiation of the feelings and the behavior towards women. So how do I feel about someone? Let's say for someone, I'm speaking directly to guys right now. We see someone who has an amazing booty, right? It's amazing. And you're like, oh my goodness, I want to smack it, right? Let's just say that happens. All guys that have a partner know this. You have a partner or a wife, boyfriend tax, you just want to bam, you want to give that booty a little tap all day, every day. Every time I see a partner, I'm like, oh, damn, right? And it's understanding, okay, one is a behavior and one is a feeling. Okay, I'm feeling sexual attraction towards my partner, and the behavior is, bang, I want to smack her on the bum. But you wouldn't go around smacking every single girl on the bum because that would be extremely inappropriate. Imagine if you go to a restaurant or a pub or something, or somewhere where there's like a festival, wherever, gym, class, you walk around gym just smacking people in the butt. Oh, you got a nice butt. You know what I mean? Vastly inappropriate, right? We cannot be doing that. But it's just interesting, like that's on a grand scale, but on a small scale, how we talk, how we act, what our energy is like, how we present ourselves in front of people, like what is the behaviors that we have, and then what are the feelings that we have? Because some man who's got his heart broken, for example, might have resentment, resentful feelings towards women, and then act like a bit of a dick to everyone. And it's like, why is that guy such an asshole? I was like, well, he just got his heart broken and maybe had a really bad relationship with his mum as well, so he doesn't actually feel that safe around women. He's like, if I talk to women, all I know is I'm going to get my heart broken, and my defense now is just be a bit of a dick so that I don't get hurt. Because if I be a dick and I push them away and they don't get close to me, then that way I prevent myself from getting hurt because it's painful, right? And that's noticing the difference between the behaviors and the feelings. Because some people don't. Some people just behave that way and they're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm just being like this. I'm just joking around, whatever it is. And it's like, well, if you actually owned your feelings to someone, in that position, let's say, scary as hell, because this can happen in positive ways as well. I'm just choosing negative. Is like, that's real scary. It's like, imagine in terms of feelings, if someone approaches you, female, like, hey, just letting you know, I have quite a lot of resentment towards women, and I'm talking to you like right now, and honestly I just want to put my walls up and be a bit of a dick because I'm scared about opening up because I might get hurt. You're not going to say that to someone like randomly in public. Imagine just like meeting someone for the first time and being like, no, sorry, I'm fearful of all women. So right, a little bit scary how that happens, and that's pushing things to the extreme as like an example. But what we're saying is the hero can differentiate between both. He's like, he knows what the feelings are, he knows what the behavior is, so then he has control over the situation, right? And it's like, oh, I might be feeling like this, I might be feeling a little bit fearful because she reminds me of an ex-partner, right? And you can still be like, hey, how you doing? It's like, it's beautiful, it's like nice to meet you, and like blah, 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 and you have like a real good conversation and you connect really well, and you're like, wow, this person is like fantastic. So without getting like those triggers coming up, it's being aware of them in the moment. Bum, bum, bum. So that's a really good way of integrating your own hero. He's got the sword. Feelings and behaviors. If anima is projected to the outer world, it can create endless trouble. A man becomes a victim of erotic fantasies. Ooh. A man becomes compulsively dependent on one woman. This is the same thing. When they say man in Man and His Symbols, they're speaking to essentially like, and then man came to earth. You know what I mean? Like there's men and women, essentially. Man and His Symbols is not gender specific in this book. So man becomes compulsively dependent on one actual woman, or woman becomes compulsively dependent on one actual man. And only the painful, essential, simple decision to take one's fantasies and feelings seriously at this stage can prevent complete stagnation of the inner process of individuation. And only in this way can man discover what this figure means in an inner reality. Thus, the anima becomes again what it originally was, the feminine within, who conveys vital messages of the self. Crazy is that. The feminine within who conveys vital messages of the self. How beautiful is that? Because we know people that we do not want to become victims of our erotic fantasies. And we know that we don't want to be compulsively dependent on someone else. But just knowing that when we do take our fantasies and our feelings seriously, and we prevent stagnation of the inner process of individuation. Remember, individuation from episode 1 is the process of becoming yourself. That is when you start having painful realizations about yourself, you're aware of your moods and attitudes, and you're swallowing bitter truths about yourself. And individuation is the process of becoming the best version of yourself. And just to re-explain that, what the best version of yourself is not actually becoming something. It's removing all the layers so that you can be your most authentic, unique self, because that person is the one who is achieving all the goals that you desire to achieve. Okay. And then a man can discover that is like actually creating his inner reality, like what's going on like in here, and making decisions from that point of view. And that feminine, the anima beside you, can become what it was. And that's to convey vital messages of yourself towards you. And you're like, wow, when you can pay attention to your intuition and your thoughts and like your feelings and your fantasies, it's like, oh, these are amazing signals for me that I can, have in the future. Like this is like real true, just like a real time example of what I do in this. We're going to get to the animus in a second too now as well. Real time, what I do in this has come up a couple of times in my own personal relationship. And within the relationship, for example, I'll bring this stuff up. The second that I'm not feeling like any attraction, or I'm losing attraction, or whatever it is, I'm like, oh, I'm paying attention to these, or I'm having fantasies about other people. I'll talk to that, like about that with my partner. Like we can hold that and we can mention it, and then we work on it and we fix it. And I always expect her to do the same thing as well with me, so that we're not beating around the bush. The animus, which is the masculine inside the... so I hope that all makes sense. Thinking caps, we're learning, crazy. Animus is a little bit different here. So it leads women away from real men, and it can be the demon of death. It is the robber and the murderer. The animus in the women can nurse secret destructive attitudes, and a wife can drive a family to illness or death, right? Holy moly. So... and it shows up in strange positivity, deep insecurity, paralysis of feeling, void or no worth, like I feel numb and no worth and haven't got any emotions. And then the unconscious animus whispers to women, you're hopeless. What's the use of trying? No point in doing anything. Life won't change for the better. So men, listen to this, right? Just in regards to your partner, right? If you're men listening to this, women, if you're listening to this and it's yourself, holy moly, right? Whoa, there's things that happen inside me. Men, if you're listening to this, is knowing that this is the battle inside of your women. And women, and understanding the battle inside of your men with the erotic and the fantasies and the impulse and the urges, understanding that is a battle that they're always going through and trying to be aware of, and getting in touch with their feelings. And for women, a lot of it in here, and it depends if you women and men, I'm using as an average, because most women, I believe, have feminine souls, let's say 80%, and most men have masculine souls, 80%. So understand with your women, men, that it's like she's always consistently trying to like be aware of, okay, there's sometimes a strange positivity. What's this about me? Or she's fighting off deep insecurity. She has a paralysis of feeling, oh no, my feelings have turned off, or not feeling any worth, or no void. Like that's the thing that she's consistently sort of going through, right? And then the unconscious animus whispers to her, you're hopeless. What's the use of trying? There's no point in doing anything, and life won't change for the better. So sometimes out of reaction, she'll over-try and overcompensate to try and fight off the feelings of you are hopeless, but it doesn't mean that they're not there, or what's the use of trying and all this other thing. And then at other times, on the opposite side of that, you'll lean into, okay, yeah, like what is the point of trying? Like I suck and I'm hopeless, and maybe you should leave me, and I'm no good, or I'm not good at this. And, then we assume that we're like our partners are attention seeking, but they're not. They're just trying to integrate their animus, and they don't understand how it works, which is interesting. And what we can do to really hold that support for our partners and learn about them to help them express the best version of ourselves, and helping us become more intelligent and express the best version of ourselves for us. So the ego identifies unable to detach, possessed by the figure of unconscious. This might be hectic for you to hear, right? This is sort of like an equation. As the ego identifies, you start to identify with your ego, quite regularly, it finds it very difficult to detach from what it is, right? It's like that is a big process. If you're learning this and you're like, oh, I don't want to change and all this stuff, it's like the detaching process is quite challenging. And when it is and you can't detach, that means that you're possessed by a figure of the unconscious. So let's say, for example, it's like, let's lose me in the traveling thing. If I can't go traveling, or I can't do that, and I feel like, and it could be that, or let's use a better example actually. Let's say you're really trying not to be reactive, but for some reason you have to, and it's like, oh, I have to be reactive with this person. And it's like, I can't detach myself from someone who feels so scared that I have to like try to protect myself. Means that you're possessed by a figure of the unconscious, and it's your journey to unravel that. So only after possession does one realize what they have, what they've been saying, what they're doing, what they're thinking. So after that, you've been controlled by a shadow. That's when you come to this realization of like, whoa, what have I just been doing? I feel like I wasn't in control for like a month, as if I just did all of those things. So having that position, when you guys ever had that feeling when you're like, what was I thinking doing that? You know what I mean? Like you could have been as a kid at school and you just start throwing bottles at cars. I don't know about you guys, but we did that. Someone else at school starts doing something crazy like that. And then you're like, what was I thinking doing those things? Like so silly, right? So that happens when we're adults as well. So what was actually wrong or recognizable in the alien psychic factor in play? Let's just leave that one, because that is actually really deep and it'll take too long to get into. Alien meanings of false. So if you want to listen to that, write that down, you can. So behind spasms of anxiety, there is indeed geniuses of mortal danger, but there's also a creative possibility for the dreamer, if one obeys the symbols of the animus and will turn creation into meaning. Same thing, animus or anima, for either ones of those. So we got a little bit clearer in the animus on that one. And this is also on the anima as well, either or. So behind spasms of anxiety, so when like either woman or man are feeling anxious, indeed this genius that is there, which assumes that there's some mortal danger, but there's also a creative possibility for the dreamer. And that's looking at the two, when it's like when you're feeling anxious. Whoa, holy, there's mortal danger here, but there's also a creative possibility for the dreamer to express, if one obeys the symbols of the animus and turns and can turn the animus or anima and can turn those inner meanings and dialogue and creation into meaning. Boom, boom, boom. That is just so powerful, right? So powerful. So there's 4 embodiment stages of the inner animus, which is known as the physical man, the romantic man, the bearer of the word, and the wise guide and spiritual of truth, which is like essentially first phase, physical man, what is meant here, and this is actually for women, but the physical man, it's just the phases, is just known as getting in touch with your body. Second 2, romantic man, is actually taking action and sort of providing, you know what I mean? And that is like when a woman has like a family who she can like, nurture and care for. The bearer of word, which is someone who actually has some intellect and they can, talk and research and study and think. And then the wise is the person who is the guide to spiritual truth and honesty, someone who has meaning and has and feels that purpose. So it's really good because they're like the 4 stages of men in general, of us to really, develop our own psyche. And it's interesting that for women, like developing that in themselves is going to make them extremely powerful, which is why I think, when you see people who do study and dedicate their time to studying, especially women, it's like they become like so powerful. There's so many leaders out there that are like just so impressive and so integrated. It's like, why are the women who study like so ridiculously powerful? And it's cool, but it's just because like, hey, they're integrated, right? So the animus becoming conscious is sort of like, it's interesting. There's a Beauty and the Beast story that comes with that. And the Beauty and the Beast story is like the perfect story, which is actually been told. It's not just a Disney story. It's been told for thousands of years. I thought maybe like 8,000 years, not thousands and thousands. It's a very old story, and it's the conscious journey of the animus. So it's inside your psyche, each character plays. So there's a beast inside a woman. There's the happy pretty girl inside the woman. There's a witch inside the woman. There's the old man inside the woman. There's the Gustav inside the woman, right? There's all these different things inside their brain and how they work. And I've worked with women and understanding like each parts of their brain. So like, how are you playing like Gustav right now? What is your beast doing right now out of love? What's the manipulative witch doing with inside you? What's beauty doing in your brain? And what's the old man? What does that represent inside your psyche? Understanding all those stories have done some deep transformational healing for people. Like it's actually insane. But I won't get into that story because I could do literally a whole podcast episode on just Beauty and the Beast. The animus, if acknowledged, can bring a woman initiative, objectivity, courage, spiritual wisdom, spiritual firmness, which compensates for outer softness, and receptive to creative ideas. So that is just a great way of integrating it. And then a negative side of the animus and the anima equals really disagreeable. So that can be a negative side of the anima. If it's not integrated, obviously I am so in for disagreeing all the time with people to protect yourself. Cool. So now we're going to get into the next phase. So that's sort of in those. This next phase is called the symbols of totality. So it's a really cool exercise here in terms of, you can answer these questions if you like, but I'm just going to ask you, when did you feel most alive? What feeling was that? Now it has been numbed. How do we get it back? Right? If that's the case. And then you're going to go through the questions of running through it. We've talked about what are the symbols in the anima or the animus which are dominant right now. How does your shadow prevent that from showing up? Started thinking about that, which is really cool to answer those questions, and that can help you symbols of totality, like bring out your most total self. This is a really cool quote here. If a man devotes himself to the instructions of his unconscious, it can bestow his gift of youth, which makes a stale life into a rich one, which is unending inner adventure full of creative possibilities. So this is like just devoting yourself to really, be aware and study on all of this. And obviously we've got a Set the Standard community. If you're interested in really aliving this and waking this up, you can book in a call with me by clicking the link below, or just you can join us by heading to our Set the Standard community Instagram. We've got some wild stuff on there. But a man devotes himself to the instructions of his own unconscious. It can bestow his gift of renewal, so that suddenly life, which has been stale and dull, turns into a rich, unending inner adventure full of creative possibilities. Beautiful, beautiful. I think that's so good. And it says here, like, man's main purpose is to be human, like in terms of figuring things out. And human comes with all of this spiritual wisdom and understanding a lot of the self. So the external world will dissolve into the great man, but the ego's extroverted orientation to the external world will disappear to make way for the cosmic man. So interesting, because it gets a lot into. I'm not going to get fully into it because literally I could do a whole podcast episode on just the great man and the cosmic man. But the great man is just sort of archetypes that Carl Jung has used. The great man is like, one of them is the best version of yourself, and then the cosmic man is the one who's transcended that person in terms of consciousness. And this happens when the ego merges into the self, which is I'm assuming only happens for periods at a time. You know when you get those really enlightened monks who just laugh all the time? They're a really good example of someone whose ego has merged into the self and they're just like, wow, I'm so happy and experiencing bliss regularly. Never forget, our outer reality exists only insofar as we perceive it consciously, and that we cannot prove that it exists in by itself. How crazy is that? Our outer reality exists only insofar as we perceive it consciously. You could have someone who have like the best businesses, have the best body, the dream life, whatever it is, and just feel like a piece of shit. That's essentially saying like, oh, well, I'm no good at this, and I'm stressing out about money, and I've got all these things. It's like, man, you've got millions of dollars in the bank. This happens regularly, and like a lot of my clients actually go through this, and that we cannot prove that it exists in and by itself, because it's like you can't go to someone and be like, hey, insecurity right there. It's like, how does this actually exist? So, which is just another reason as to why paying attention to all of this and understanding it and becoming aware of it is so powerful, which is really cool. So they talk a little bit about the philosopher's stone in here, and the philosopher's stone they mention is in the psyche of man. When you recognize the stone within you, it'll grow. It is extracted from you. It's a symbol that can never be lost or dissolved, and it can burn away by superfluous psychic elements concealing the stone. The philosopher's stone in you is sort of like your own, this is like getting a little esoteric, alchemical powers, which is mentioned in here, which is like your own consciousness, your own unique gift that comes in like inside your brain and how you use it. And a lot of alchemists, old school alchemists, which people think are like, oh, mixing potions and stuff, have got nothing to do with that. It's actually all inside your mind and becoming aware of it. And they use it as a symbol only inside your brain. And I don't know, like that's roughly what I know on it. I read a lot more into it, so I'd have to look at it again if I wanted to go a little bit deeper on that one. But open to the conversation if you guys are keen, send me a message. Action to individuation is to individuation is to individuate, learn and watch for coincidences. Make them meaningful in relation to dream symbols. So when you have synchronicities and you have coincidence happen in life, you go, what's this? Meet this person, see this person, holy moly, right? Make them meaningful and try to relate them to your dream symbols. Because those synchronicities is when an inner event plus a outer event happens in real life. So it's plus a meaningful coincidence, it makes a synchronicity. So you're like, oh, I was just thinking about you, and now I've seen you, and that's a meaningful coincidence because I actually need to talk to you about this business deal. Like, holy moly, that is what synchronicity actually is in the definition of it. And when you're in the process of individuation and you're individuating, synchronicities are happening all the time, which is really cool. I just think that's so beautiful. Relation to the self, people suffer terrible emptiness and boredom as if they are waiting for something that never arises. Question here. We have normal food, but where is your soul food? Right? So in relation to yourself, if you're suffering terrible emptiness and boredom as if you're wanting something new and it never arises, which I think is such a powerful sentence, like looking at that in terms of like just looking at it. The question here is, we got normal food, but where is your soul food for this one? And swap words as well, right? There's a real cool, powerful part in the book mentioned in here. Is like if you want to swap some language around, one is swap the word I feel disconnected to I feel disenchanted. Because there's a connection between like not feeling disconnected, which means if you are disconnected, it means that you have been disenchanted by your shadow, right? So it's not that you've been enchanted to something something positive and productive. So you're disenchanted to something negative. So stay with me, guys. We're almost finished. Wake up. Whoom. Just wake up moment. Bam, bam, bam. Wake up. We're close to the end, right? Swap some questions around, right? Question swap. What causes this or what causes that? Change that to what likes to occur with that. So if you're like, oh, what's causing that? And what's causing that? You swap around like what likes to occur with this. So for example, let's say it's like, the dishes aren't clean, but what likes to occur with that is me being distracted on my phone, right? So that way we're not getting angry at the symptom. We're like, okay, I'm getting distracted on my phone and that's making me not do the dishes. So that's what's occurring with it. And you can think about a positive stuff. So what occurs when I make money? What occurs with it? I message a lot of people before I book a strategy call, and then we figure out if people want to join the community or not. For me, it's like, oh, that's interesting. So I should message more people, right? What likes to occur with what? Real powerful change in questions. Let me know if you hit that bad boy. Awesome. Man loses contact with regulating the center of his soul. This is what we're going to be talking about now. A single instinctive drive or emotional image can carry him to one-sidedness that can make him lose balance. Whoa. Sexually excited, forgets hunger and security, loss of soul, symptoms, excessive daydreaming, threatens concentration and consistency. So a single instinctive drive or emotional image can carry him into one-sidedness that makes him lose balance. Right, so that's very powerful because that's for us, up to us to understand what's the one image that we have. And then in terms of possession, which is really cool in terms of our own meaning to life, it's like they explain things. We have two options. One is we get people can get way too into the universe and become very spiritual bypass, hippie, and they're like feel like they're a part of something greater, but too much so. And then other people can experience, I've got no meaning. I'm just a miserable earthly creature. There's a body. There's nothing important. Blah 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 blah. And you see people go full hippie, and you see people go, no, nothing's important. You know, there's nothing greater, whatever it is. The most important thing is having balance between the two. So being able to go and get into the hippie thing and then be grounded. Go out into the esoteric, come and be grounded. And that is using things in your mind, which is very powerful, and your ego is in control of that. And your ego got too much into the hippie world and then not enough into the too type of grounded person, right? So we want to do a little bit of both. The self depresses the human, though it is the only thing that can redeem him. So cool, so cool. So cool, because it's like we're either fighting for ourselves or against ourselves. Spiritually attuned and similarly orientated people find their way to one and then create a group that cuts across the usual social organized affiliations of people. Not conflict, just different and independent. Boom. That is one of the reasons why I created Set the Standard, baby. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like that one quote here, I hit this and I was like, like that's happened to me. I'm like, whoa. And then I was like, yeah, I got to start some crazy shit in regards to that and create a Set the Standard, which is really cool. And that's essentially it, guys. That's going to be it for this one. There's a couple of other notes there, but if you want them, and you're interested into more of this, you want to learn a little bit more, send me a message, booking a call with me, or come and join Set the Standard community. Like we'll get into it a little bit more. There's a little bit extra stuff in there, but honestly, it's just going to take a bunch of time. So I love talking about this and I hope this has served you, and it's extremely powerful. And if you get this, do send it to someone. Please don't project all the stuff that you've learned from here and be like, oh, I need to learn this stuff. This is crazy, right? And just knowing that you guys, by listening to this, are the people that are becoming more spiritually attuned, similarly orientated towards me, my friendship group, like all together, even if we never meet each other, find our way to become one and then create a group that cuts across the usual social and organized affiliations of people. Boom! New movement, let's go. Not conflict, just different and independent. Let's go. That's you, that's me. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please give us a follow and we'll see you in the next one.